All right. Hello, everybody. We're starting a little bit earlier before this was scheduled to start, just to get things ready to go, and we'll get into action. We've got a Fed decision that just came out, and that decision was to keep interest rates where they are. We are not going to be raising interest rates in the United States of America anytime soon, as per what JPOW wants to do. We are going to have interest rates stay at 5.5. My hair is absolutely crazy, dude. My hair is just crazy right now. This is why you guys are like, yo, take off your hat and leave the hair. This is what happens when I leave the hair. It just goes crazy. We're going to have interest rates where they are, and we are going to have JPOW talking in about 6 minutes. Now, interest rates are at 5.5. We kind of knew that was going to happen. In terms of the market, the broader market is pretty much unchanged from this. Nothing really crazy happened. SMCI still is up 3% on the day. SoFi now down about 4.5%. Palantir down about 2%. We see a lot of red on the right-hand side of my screen. So obviously things are red. Microsoft falling about 1.9%. Google has just gotten destroyed today. At one point, it got to $141. So Google is still down. QQQ is down to 419. It was at 428 yesterday. S&P 500 is also down to 45, down about 1%. What he says in this call is really going to determine the framework that the market is going to be able to apply going forward into the future to be able to figure out, what should we do about this market and how should we interact with this market, and if a rate cut truly is coming. And that's going to be, I think, the biggest thing for, why we're even listening to JPOW so clearly. So we got a lot to talk about. I'll be here till about 4 p.m. I mean, this will bleed into market close. So we'll do this, then we'll do the market close, and then we'll be out of here about 4 p.m., 4:10. So I'll be here for the next 2 hours. Spine and Bloom corner. Gino, Mr. Seymour Duck, Scott, Philip, Francisco, Mark LeBlanc, Matenja, Dragon, Amit Dioni, physical gold and silver. I do not. Palantir does not have the 50 million in gold anymore. They sold that, I think, because they realized they were making more money in short-term treasuries off that 5%. So that's why they ended up selling that. Kelly says you're cute in the chat. Thank you for saying that. She says my hair is a head of straw because I'm not moisturizing correctly. Okay, understood. I need to order more of that conditioner. Cows, Amit, did you get a haircut? I did, but my haircut is mainly on the sides and the fade and the beard. The actual hair, it sometimes wants to cooperate, it sometimes doesn't. It just stays on the top of my head like a bag of straws or whatever Kelly called it. Shem Pasta, Silas, Mark Strong, thank you all for being here. Okay, so one thing I want to show you guys, a couple things. We got JPOW in 4 minutes. Here's what the Fed decision thing came out with in terms of the actual transcript. So New York City Bank is collapsing today. They're down 40%. Their earnings tanked the bed. We didn't get to talk about them in the market open. We'll talk about them later, but they had a really bad day. The Fed has the same statement every time they keep rates the same. And today, Meet Kevin pointed out, the Fed just removed the comment that the U.S. banking system is sound and resilient. This is what they had in the December or in the last FOMC meeting. This has changed in the January meeting, which is today, in terms of their statement. So the same day you take that out when you say the New York, when NYCB is collapsing, a little bit weird, not really cool to see. But it is something that is, I think, one thing we need to look for in terms of how JPOW thinks about not only inflation, but also how they think about the overall banking system. The Fed also said they are not going to be cutting rates until they are more confident that inflation is heading to 2%. So again, the same type of inflation narrative we're hearing, that until it goes lower, we're not going to be doing anything. It is the same thing, and I think JPOW will reiterate that. The question is going to be, does he give us any new indications of how he feels about inflation? And then on top of that, I want to show this real quick. The Senate is testifying Zucks and all these other tech CEOs, and here's an exchange that happened with Zucks. We got 3 minutes till the JPOW thing goes. This is something I want to show you. New York Community Bank. That's how you call it. This is a 2-minute clip of what I want to show you what Josh Hawley did to Mark Zuckerberg today. It was quite fascinating to see the kind of circus that was going on in Congress. And then we got JPOW talking about 3 minutes. Here we go.
Steps that you took, the fact that you didn't fire a single person. Let me ask you this. Have you compensated any of the victims?
Sorry?
Have you compensated any of the victims? These girls, have you compensated them?
I don't believe so.
Why not? Don't you think they deserve some compensation for what your platform has done? Help with counseling services, help with dealing with the issues that your services caused?
Our job is to make sure that we build tools to help keep people safe.
Are you going to compensate them?
Senator, our job and what we take seriously is making sure that we build industry-leading tools to find harmful
To make
content,
money.
take it off the services,
To make money.
and to build tools that empower parents.
So you
that
didn't
help
take
more
any
people.
action. You didn't
That's
take
not
any
true,
action. You
Senator.
didn't fire anybody. You haven't
That's not true.
compensated a
That's
single
not-
victim.
that's
Let
not
me
what I
ask you
said.
this. Let me ask you this. There's families of victims here today. Have you apologized to the victims? Would you like to do so now?
Well,
They're here. You're on national television. Would you like now to apologize to the victims who have been harmed by your product? Show them the pictures. Would you
Zucks actually stands up and apologizes, dude.
like to apologize for what you've done to these good people?
I mean, this is embarrassing, dude. This is embarrassing.
No one should have to go through the things that your families have suffered. And this is why we invest.
This is a multi-billionaire apologizing to these parents because their teens were too self-absorbed with all these Instagram pictures. I mean, this is insane that this is happening right now.
So much and are going to continue doing industry-leading efforts to make sure that no one has to go through the types of things that your families have had to suffer.
Look at all the news reporters taking pictures of this stuff. I mean, this is just a circus. We're going to get to the Fed meeting in like 20 seconds, but this was insane to see today. Josh Hawley got major PR points from his constituency. He just needed to make Zucks look bad. He made a multi-billionaire look bad. Congrats to Josh Hawley. Zucks, though, dude, what is going on, man? Like, that is, you gotta do your thing. You gotta just, be your man, stand your ground. And Zucks did not do that. Zucks simply did not do that. He just let him walk all over him. And on top of that, he basically admitted he was wrong. He basically admitted that, yeah, we did mess up and we do deserve to apologize. If I'm Zucks, I don't know if I really did anything wrong. I don't know. And there's some sections, yes, of course, Facebook has responsibility, but I don't know, man. Your entire take for years has been Facebook as a platform. The way people use it is on them. If that's the argument you're going with, why change now? If it's worked for so long, even if, maybe that's not the most ethical argument, that is a subjective opinion you can have. But if you're the CEO of the company, you need to make it objective that Facebook is a platform and how people use it is up to them. It's not our fault that teenage girls get sad if they see some girl in a bikini and they don't think they have, as voluptuous of a body. Like, that's on parents to be able to make sure that teen girl doesn't grow up with confidence issues, not Instagram for showing a picture that a girl posts, right? So it was really interesting to see that happen. A lot of the tech CEOs got grilled. The only one that actually did it correctly, or as we're waiting for JPOW, is Linda Yaccarino. Linda, we need more tech women CEOs, in my opinion. Linda stood her ground. She made her arguments. She said what she had to say. Now, granted, Twitter doesn't have as many advertisers as Facebook, and so they probably don't have that much to lose given certain things that they're saying, but she was headfast. She was strong. And I respected how she interacted. Evan Spiegel from Snapchat was stuttering. Jason Citron from Discord was stuttering. The other guy the Chinese dude from TikTok, stuttering. I mean, these people could not answer anything. These people could not answer anything at all. So it was pretty bad. All right, we got JPOW. Here we go. Here he is.
Dual mandate to promote maximum. The economy has made good progress toward our dual mandate objectives. Inflation has eased from its highs without a significant increase in unemployment. That's very good news. But inflation is still too high. Ongoing progress in bringing it down is not assured, and the path forward is uncertain. I want to assure the American people that we are fully committed to returning inflation to our 2% goal. Restoring price stability is essential to achieve a sustained period of strong labor market conditions that benefit all. Today, the FOMC decided to leave our policy interest rate unchanged and to continue to reduce our securities holdings. Over the past 2 years, we have significantly tightened the stance of monetary policy. Our strong actions have moved our policy rate well into restrictive territory, and we've been seeing the effects on economic activity and inflation. As labor market tightness has eased and progress on inflation has continued, the risks to achieving our employment and inflation goals are moving into better balance. I will have more to say about monetary policy after briefly reviewing economic developments. Recent indicators suggest that economic activity has been expanding at a solid pace. GDP growth in the fourth quarter of last year came in at 3.3%. For 2023 as a whole, GDP expanded at 3.1%, bolstered by strong consumer demand as well as improving supply conditions. Activity in the housing sector was subdued over the past year, largely reflecting high mortgage rates. High interest rates also appear to have been weighing on business fixed investment. The labor market remains tight, but supply and demand conditions continue to come into better balance. Over the past 3 months, payroll job gains averaged 165,000 jobs per month, a pace that is well below that seen a year ago, but still strong. The unemployment rate remains low at 3.7%. Strong job creation has been accompanied by an increase in the supply of workers. The labor force participation rate has moved up on balance over the past year, particularly for individuals aged 25 to 54 years, and immigration has returned to pre-pandemic levels. Nominal wage growth has been easing and job vacancies have declined. Although the jobs to workers gap has narrowed, labor demand still exceeds the supply of available workers. Inflation has eased notably over the past year, but remains above our longer run goal of 2%. Total PCE prices rose 2.6% over the 12 months ending in December. Excluding the volatile food and energy categories, core PCE prices rose 2.9%. The lower inflation readings over the second half of last year are welcome, but we will need to see continuing evidence to build confidence that inflation is moving down sustainably toward our goal. Longer-term inflation expectations appear to remain well anchored, as reflected in a broad range of surveys of households, businesses, and forecasters, as well as measures from financial markets. The Fed's monetary policy actions are guided by our mandate to promote maximum employment and stable prices for the American people. My colleagues and I are acutely aware that high inflation imposes significant hardship as it erodes purchasing power, especially for those least able to meet the higher costs of essentials like food, housing, and transportation. We're highly attentive to the risks that high inflation poses to both sides of our mandate, and we're strongly committed to returning inflation to our 2% objective. Over the past 2 years, we have raised our policy rate by 5.25 percentage points, and we've decreased our securities holdings by more than $1.3 trillion. Our restrictive stance of monetary policy is putting downward pressure on economic activity and inflation. The committee decided at today's meeting to maintain the target range for the federal funds rate at 5.25% to 5.5%, and to continue the process of significantly reducing our securities holdings. We believe that our policy rate is likely at its peak for this tightening cycle, and that if the economy evolves broadly as expected, it will likely be appropriate to begin dialing back policy restraint at some point this year. But the economy has surprised forecasters in many ways since the pandemic, and ongoing progress toward our 2% inflation objective is not assured. The economic outlook is uncertain, and we remain highly attentive to inflation risks. We are prepared to maintain the current target range for the federal funds rate for longer, if appropriate. As labor market tightness has eased and progress on inflation has continued, the risks to achieving our employment and inflation goals are moving into better balance. We know that reducing policy restraint too soon or too much could result in a reversal of the progress we've seen on inflation and ultimately require even tighter policy to get inflation back to 2%. At the same time, reducing policy restraint too late or too little could unduly weaken economic activity and employment. In considering any adjustments to the target range for the federal funds rate, the committee will carefully assess the incoming data, the evolving outlook, and the balance of risks. The committee does not expect that it will be appropriate to reduce the target range until it has gained greater confidence that inflation is moving sustainably toward 2%. We will continue to make our decisions meeting by meeting. We remain committed to bringing inflation back down to our 2% goal and to keeping longer-term inflation expectations well anchored. Restoring price stability is essential to set the stage for achieving maximum employment and stable prices over the longer run. To conclude, we understand that our actions affect communities, families, and businesses across the country. Everything we do is in service to our public mission. we at the Fed will do everything we can to achieve our maximum employment and price stability goals. Thank you. I look forward to our questions.
Gina Smiley from the New York Times. Thanks for taking our questions. Obviously, in the statement and just in your remarks there, you note that you don't want to cut interest rates without greater confidence that inflation is coming down fully. I wonder, what do you need to see at this point to gain that confidence? And as you make those decisions, how are you weighing recent strong growth in consumer spending data against the sort of solid inflation progress you've been seeing?
Sorry, say that last part again.
How are you weighing the growth data and consumption data, which have been surprisingly strong, against inflation data?
Okay. So what are we looking for to get greater confidence? Let me say that we have confidence. We're looking for greater confidence that inflation is moving sustainably down to 2%. Implicitly, we do have confidence and has been increasing, but we want to get greater confidence. What do we want to see? We want to see more good data. It's not that we're looking for better data. We're looking at continuation of the good data that we've been seeing. And a good example is inflation. So we have 6 months of good inflation data. The question really is, that 6 months of good inflation data, is it sending us a true signal that we are in fact on a path, sustainable path down to 2% inflation? That's the question. And the answer will come from some more data that's also good data. It's not that the 6 month data isn't low enough. It is. It's just a question of, can we take that with confidence that we're moving sustainably down to 2%? That's really what we're thinking about. In terms of growth, we've had strong growth. I mean, if you take a step back, we've had strong growth, very strong growth last year, going right into the fourth quarter. And yet we've had a very strong labor market, and we've had inflation coming down. So I think, whereas a year ago we were thinking that we needed to see some softening in economic activity, that hasn't been the case. So I think we look at stronger growth. We don't look at it as a problem. I think at this point we want to see strong growth. We want to see a strong labor market. We're not looking for a weaker labor market. We're looking for inflation to continue to come down as it has been coming down for the last 6 months.
And I'm sorry, if I could just follow up very quickly. When you say that you want to make sure that it's a true signal, is there anything that you're seeing in the data that makes you doubt that it's a true signal at this stage?
No, I think I would say it seems to be the likely case that we will achieve that confidence, but we have to achieve it, and we haven't yet. And so, I mean, it's a good story. We have 6 months of good inflation, but you can, and you know this, you can look behind those numbers and you can see that a lot of it's been coming from goods inflation, for example, and goods inflation running significantly negative. It's a reasonable assumption that over time, goods inflation will flatten out, probably approximate zero. That would mean the services sectors would have to contribute more. So in other words, what we care about is the aggregate number, not so much the composition, but we just need to see more. That's where we are as a committee. We need to see more evidence that sort of confirms what we think we're seeing, and that tells us that we are gives us confidence that we're on a path to a sustainable path down to 2% inflation.
Nick Timros of the Wall Street Journal. Chair Powell, it seems to me you raised rates rapidly over the last 2 years for two reasons. One was the risk of a wage price spiral. Two, there were risks of inflation expectations becoming unanchored. This morning's ECI report for the fourth quarter shows private sector payroll growth running at a sub 4% pace. Inflation expectations are very close to where they were before the inflation emergency of the last 3 years. And given that you appear to have substantially cut off these two tail risks, and that you've judged here today current policy is well into restrictive territory, what good reason is there to keep policy rates above 5%? Are you really going to learn more waiting 6 weeks versus 3 months from now that you have avoided those two risks?
So, as you know, almost every participant on the committee does believe that it will be appropriate to reduce rates. And for partly for the reasons that you say, you know, we feel like inflation is coming down. Growth has been strong. The labor market is strong. What we're trying to do is identify a place where we're really confident about inflation getting back down to 2%, so that we can then begin the process of dialing back the restrictive level. So overall, I think people do believe, and as you know, the median participant wrote down 3 rate cuts this year. But I think to get to that place where we feel comfortable starting the process, we need some confirmation that inflation is in fact coming down sustainably to 2%.
If I could ask differently, if you hold rates high as inflation moderates, as it has been, target rates will exceed the prescriptions of the Taylor rule or its variants. What would be the reasoning for holding rates higher than the levels recommended by those rules in the current instance?
Well, I think, as you know, we consult a range of Taylor rules and non-Taylor kind of rules. We consult them regularly. They're in our teal book and they're in all the materials that we look at. But, you know, I don't think we've ever been at a place where we were setting policy by them. And they're, depending on the rule, it will tell you different things. There are many different formulations. Another way to think about it is implicitly is, so in theory, of course, real rates go up if holding all else equal as inflation comes down. But that doesn't mean we can mechanically adjust policy as real rates, as inflation comes down. It doesn't mean that at all, because for one thing, we don't know. We look at more than just the Fed funds rate. We look at broadly financial conditions. But in addition, we don't know with great confidence where the neutral rate of interest is at any given time. But that also doesn't mean that we wait around for to see the economy turn down, because that would be too late. So we're really in a risk management mode of managing the risk, as I mentioned in my opening remarks, managing the risk that we move too soon and move too late. And I think to move, which is where almost everyone on the committee is in favor of moving rates down this year. But the timing of that is going to be linked to our gaining confidence that inflation is on a sustainable path down to 2%.
Hi, thanks, Chair Powell. I'd like you to key in on the use of the word in the statement that inflation still remains elevated. You've pledged to cut rates before inflation reached 2%. So that implies that there's some sort of intermediate step here on inflation, and that a cut would be consequent with a change in the statement language that inflation remains elevated. What's the step down from there?
Yeah, I don't know that we worked out the particular statement language and that kind of thing. I would just say, if you look at where 12-month inflation is, and it's still well above core is 2.9%, for example, 12 months, which is way down from where it was. Very, very positive development, very fast decline, and the case is likely that it will continue to come down. So that's where it is. But we're wanting to see more data.
So if I could follow up on that, the statement allows that you want greater confidence on inflation falling before you cut, but it doesn't mention the other side of the mandate, a slide in employment. Would a slide in employment also bring you to the point of cutting rates? Yes.
So let me say that we're not looking for that. It's not something we're looking for. But yes, if you think about, in the base case, the economy is performing well. The labor market remains strong. If we saw an unexpected weakening certainly in the labor market, that would certainly weigh on cutting sooner. Absolutely. And if we saw inflation being stickier or higher or those sorts of things, would argue for moving later. In the base case, though, where the economy is healthy and we have ongoing growth, solid growth, we have a strong labor market, we have inflation coming down. That's what people are writing their SEP around. And in that case, what we're saying is, based on that, we think we can and should take advantage of that and be careful as we approach that question of when to begin to dial back restriction.
Claire Jones, Financial Times. Just to circle back to the greater confidence aspect of the statement, there's been a lot of unanimity in recent meetings. I'm just wondering, going forward, when it comes to all needing greater confidence, is the unanimity or at least consensus among FOMC members about what the threshold for that greater confidence is? And if not, could you maybe tell us a little bit about the discussion today on, what the variations between FOMC members was on what constitutes enough confidence to cut rates, and also if there was any variation on how quickly that greater confidence threshold could be reached? Thank
So
you.
we're not really at that stage. You know, there was no proposal to cut rates. Some people did, you know, talk about their view of the rate path. I would point you to the SEP as you know, as good evidence of where people are, although it is one cycle later. So, you know, we're not at a place of really working out those kinds of details because we weren't actively considering, you know, moving the federal funds rate down. I will say there is a wide disparity, a healthy disparity of views, and you see that in public statements, in the minutes and the transcripts when they're released every 5 years. So we do have a healthy set of differences, and I think that's actually essential for making good policy. We're also able to reach agreement generally because we listen to each other, we compromise, and even though not everybody loves what we do, they're able to, for the most part, able to join in. To me, that's a well-functioning public institution.
Hi, Chair Powell, Rachel Siegel from the Washington Post. Thanks for taking our questions. So over the past few years, there have been all these real-time indicators that helped us gain a sharper understanding of where the economy was, like open table data or office attendance. You've talked about vacancies in the past. And I'm wondering at the start of this year, what might be on that dashboard for you that's giving you the clearest picture of the economy, including on rents, if you could touch on that.
Including?
Rent costs.
Yeah. Well, so we're not, you know, it's not the pandemic, so we can actually rely on more traditional forms. People are working, they're getting wages, and the economy is largely reopened and is broadly normalizing, as you see. So I wouldn't say we're looking at that sort of more innovative data as much. You know, you point to rents. So of course we follow the components of inflation very carefully, which would be goods inflation. I talked about that a little bit. You mentioned housing inflation. So the question is, when will these lower market rents find their way into measured rents as measured in PCE inflation? And we think that's coming. And we know it's coming. It's just a question of when and how big it'll be. So that's in everyone's forecast, I would say. So that will help. But at the same time, we think goods inflation will probably, it's been giving a lot of disinflation to the effort, and probably that declines over time, but it may well have some more time to run. You know, the supply chains are not perfectly back to where they were. In addition, it takes time for the healing process to get into prices. So there may be still a tailwind. We'll find out with that. So we look at the things that relate to our mandate very carefully, and as you would imagine.
I guess just as a quick follow-up, do you feel comfortable at this point saying the economy has reached a soft landing, or is that part of looking for more confidence?
No, I wouldn't say we've achieved that, and I think we have a ways to go. Inflation is still, you know, core inflation is still well above target on a 12-month basis. 12 months is our target. Certainly, I'm encouraged, and we're encouraged by the progress, but you know, we're not declaring victory at all at this point. We think we have a ways to go.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You've said that you would know the neutral rate by its works. So I'm wondering what you could tell me. How do you believe the neutral rate is working? We're telling you right now that growth is stronger. In other words, how much is the economy really being restrained right now by the current funds rate? And how much restraint does it really need additionally if inflation is still coming down?
So I think you do see in the interest sensitive parts of the economy, you do see, for example, housing, you see the effects, you do. Your second question though, really, I think is important. And that is, a lot of this has come through, a lot of the disinflationary process has come through the healing of supply chains and also of the labor market. So you've seen that, you know, that other set of factors is really different from other cycles and has brought that, working with tighter policy, which has enabled the supply side to recover, I think is that mixture has been behind what has enabled this. So no, we really do think that we're having an effect broadly across the economy. I would point to the interest sensitive parts of the economy as well as spending generally. But it's a joint story. It's a complicated story.
But how much restraint are you actually imparting to the economy, would you say, relative to the neutral rate?
So I think it's of course, you know, that it's not something you can identify with any precision, but a standard approach would be to take the nominal rate, 5.3%, let's say, and subtract sort of a forward measure of inflation. If you do that, there are many, many ways to calculate the neutral rate, but that's one I like to do. And you're going to get to something that is materially above mainstream estimates of neutrality, of the neutral rate. You will. But at the same time, you look at the economy and you say, this is an economy that grew 3.1% last year. And you say, what does that tell you about the neutral rate? What's happening, though, is the supply side has been recovering in the middle of this. So that won't go on forever. So a lot of the growth we're seeing it isn't just a tug of war between interest rates and demand. You're getting, more activity because of labor market healing and supply chains healing. So I think the question is, when that peters out, I think the restriction will show up probably more sharply.
Thank you. Sorry. Thanks for taking the question, Mr. Chairman. You mentioned earlier we're not seeking a weaker labor market. I think you said. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Do you think the labor market now is back to quote unquote normal, and that we can achieve the inflation target without wage gains coming back down to what they were pre-pandemic? Even with today's ECI levels, they were still above those pre-pandemic levels.
I think the labor market by many measures is at or nearing normal, but not totally back to normal. And you pointed to one or more of them. So I think, job openings are not quite back to where they were. Wage increases rather are not quite back to where they would need to be in the longer run. I would look at it this way, though. The economy is broadly normalizing, and so is the labor market. And that process will probably take some time. So wage setting is something that happens. It's probably will take a couple of years to get all the way back. And that's okay. That's okay. But we do see, you saw today's ECI reading, the evidence is that that wage increases are still at a healthy level, very healthy level, but they're gradually moving back to levels that would be more associated, given assumptions about productivity, are more typically associated with 2% inflation. It's an ongoing process, a healthy one, and I think we're moving in the right direction.
So that process can continue without a weakening of the labor market, basically, you're saying?
Well, I think the labor market I don't know if it's rebalancing. Clearly, there was a fairly severe imbalance between demand for workers and supply at the beginning of the pandemic. So we lost several million workers at the beginning of the pandemic from people dropping out of the labor force. And then when the economy reopened, you remember 2021, you had a severe labor shortage, and it was everywhere. Panic on the part of businesses, couldn't find people. So what's happened is we expected the labor market to come back quickly, and it didn't. And 2022 was a disappointing year. And, we were kind of thinking, well, maybe we won't get it back. And then 2023, we did, as you know. So labor force participation came back strongly in 23, and so did immigration. Immigration came to a halt during the pandemic. So those two forces have significantly lowered the temperature in the labor market to where it's still a very strong labor market. It's still a good labor market for wages and for finding a job, but it's getting back into balance. And that's what we want to see. And, one great way to look at that is what's happening with wage increases. And you see it now across the major things that we track. It isn't every quarter, but overall, there's a clear trend, still at high levels, but back down to what would be consistent with where we were before the pandemic and with 2% inflation.
Hi, Chris Rugaber at Associated Press. Thank you. I wanted to follow up on Rich's question. It sounded like you suggested that you're not worried about faster growth so much. So wanted to see if you're seeing anything that suggests that inflation could reaccelerate from here. And it sounds like you're saying you're not worried that solid growth from here on out poses any risk to inflation. Thank you.
No, I think that is a risk, the risk that inflation would reaccelerate. I think the greater risk is that it would stabilize at a level meaningfully above 2%. That's to me more likely. Of course, if inflation were to surprise by moving back up, we would have to respond to that, and that would be a surprise at this point. But I have to tell you, that's why we keep our options open here and why we're not, rushing. So I think both of those are risks, but I think the more likely risk is the one that I mentioned, which is you've had 6 good months, very good months, but what's really going to shake out here? What will, when we look back, what will we see? Will inflation have dipped and then come back up? Are the last 6 months flattered by factors that are one-off factors that won't repeat themselves? We don't think so. We don't, that's not what we think, but that's the question we are asking. We have to ask, and we want to get comfort on that.
And just one quick follow-up. Governor Waller had mentioned the revisions that are coming on February 9th for the CPI data. Is that something you're watching as well? And if we see those revisions fairly minor, is that going to give you more confidence where things are going?
We'll just have to see. Yeah, we'll look at those. Last year was a surprise.
Michael McKee, Bloomberg Radio and Television. If you don't want to use the term soft landing, would you say at least that from your point of view now, the other scenario of a hard landing caused by the Fed is off the table, or the risks have diminished very much? And you mentioned below 2% inflation on a 3-month basis. Core PCE has been running at 1.5%. And there are those on Wall Street who think that if you maintain the level of restriction you have right now, you could end up with inflation running below your target. How do you see that?
So your first question, how to describe where we are. So I guess I would just say this. Executive summary would be that growth is solid to strong over the course of last year. The labor market, 3.7% unemployment indicates that the labor market is strong. We've had just about 2 years now of unemployment under 4%. That hasn't happened in 50 years. So it's a good labor market. And we've seen inflation come down. We've talked about that. So we've got 6 months of good inflation data and an expectation that there's more to come. So this is a good situation. Let's be honest. This is a good economy. But what's the outlook? That's looking in the review. The outlook, we do expect growth to moderate. Of course, we have expected it for some time, and it hasn't happened. But we do expect that it will moderate as supply chain and labor market normalization runs its course. The labor market is rebalancing, as I mentioned. Job creation has slowed. The base of job growth has narrowed. And of course, 12-month inflation is above target and getting down closer to target. It's not guaranteed, but we do seem to be getting on track for that. So those are the risks and questions we have to answer. But overall, this is a pretty good picture. It is a good picture. Your second question was, sorry.
Could you get inflation that is below target, end up with inflation below target, and you have to do something about that?
So the thing is, we're not looking for inflation to tap the 2% base once. We're looking for it to settle out over time at 2%. And the same thing is true. If we have a month or two of lower, and we have that now, of inflation that's annualized at a lower level, that wouldn't be good. We're not looking to have inflation anchor below 2%. We're looking to have it anchor at 2%. So if we do face those circumstances, then we'll have to deal with that. I think as of now, the question, we want to take advantage of this situation and finish the job on inflation while keeping the labor market strong.
Edward Lawrence from Fox Business. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for taking this. So as I've heard from some district Fed presidents, is it, in your view, a little premature to think that rate cuts are right around the corner? And then when we do see that first rate cut, should we interpret that as the beginning of a rate cut cycle, or is it a one-off?
So I'll point to that language on your first question. We included that language in the statement to signal clearly that with strong growth, strong labor market, inflation coming down, the committee intends to move carefully as we consider when to begin to dial back the restrictive stance that we have in place. So if you take that to the current context, we're going to be data dependent. We're going to be looking at this meeting by meeting. Based on the meeting today, I would tell you that I don't think it's likely that the committee will reach a level of confidence by the time of the March meeting to identify March as the time to do that. But that's to be seen. So I wouldn't call, when you ask me about in the near term, I'm hearing that as March. I would say I don't think that's probably not the most likely case or what we would call the base case. Then your second question is
is this the start of when we see a cut, is it the start of a cutting cycle, or could it just be a one-off?
That's going to depend on the data. The whole thing is this is going to depend on the data. We're going to be looking at the economic data as it affects the outlook and the balance of risks, and we're going to make our decisions based on that. And it could wind up, we'll have another SEP at the March meeting, and people will write down what they think. But in the end, it's really going to depend on how the economy evolves. We talked about there are risks that would cause us to go slower. For example, stronger inflation, more persistent inflation. There are risks that would cause us to, or if they happened, that would cause us to go faster and sooner, and that would be a weakening in the labor market, or for that matter, very, very persuasive lower inflation. Those are the kinds of things. So we're just going to be reacting to the data. That's really the only way we can do this.
Victoria. Hi, Victoria Guido with Politico. Could you talk a little bit more about productivity growth? You've mentioned multiple times about, the level of wage growth that's consistent with 2% inflation. We've obviously seen, you were talking about ECI this morning, in which it's cooled a little bit, but still sort of above what you wanted to see. Growth has been very strong. How much of those numbers do you attribute to productivity? And do you see that productivity as sort of just temporary because of the factors, the labor and supply chain factors you were talking about? Or do you think that productivity growth will fade over time?
So this is a really interesting question. And I think my own view is, I think if you look back to the pandemic, you saw a spike in productivity as workers were laid off and activity didn't decline as fast. And then you saw a deep trough of productivity. And then over the last, you saw high productivity last year in 23. I think we're basically in the throes of getting through the pandemic economy. And the question will be, what is it that has changed? The productivity tends to be based on, fundamental aspects of our economy. Is there a case, will it be the case that we come out of this more productive, more on a sustained basis? And I don't know. What would it take? It would take, people talk about AI, but my guess is that we may shake out and be back where we were, because I'm not sure I see work from home doesn't seem like it's a big productivity increaser. AI, artificial intelligence, generative may be, but probably not in the short run, probably maybe in the longer run. So I'm not seeing why it would, but right now, I would say the productivity is kind of what falls out of the broader forces that are driving people in and out of the labor force and activity returning and supply chains getting fixed.
Right. So would that be behind why we've seen such strong growth, but we've also seen inflation fall, that maybe there's just a higher level of productivity?
That's one way to look at it. Yeah.
Hi, Chair Powell, Nancy Marshall-Genzer with Marketplace. I want to ask a little bit more about housing. I'm wondering, how closely are you watching rent and housing prices as you evaluate whether and when to cut rates? And it seems like housing prices are not coming down as quickly as you expected.
So when we think about, our statutory goals are maximum employment and price stability, and that's what we're targeting. We're not targeting housing price inflation, the cost of housing, or any of those things. Those are very important things for people's lives, but they're not, those are not the things we're targeting. We're also well aware that when we cut rates at the beginning of the pandemic, for example, the housing industry was helped more than any other industry. And when we raise rates, the housing industry can be hurt because it's a very interest-sensitive sector. On top of that, we have longer run problems with the availability of housing. We have a built-up set of cities, and people are moving further and further out. So there hasn't been enough housing built, and these are not things that we have any tools to address. But where it comes into play very specifically in our work is inflation, which is a combination. It's really rental inflation. You're taking owner's equivalent rent and then actual rent paid by tenants, and you're running that through the CPI calculation or the PCE calculation, the one we look at. And what that's telling you is that market rents are increasing at a much lower rate or even being flat, and that will show up in inflation over time. It has to, as long as that remains the case. So.
And just real quick, what is your response to the letter that was sent to you by some members of Congress asking the Fed to lower interest rates to make housing more affordable?
My response is what I started with, which is that our job, the job Congress has given us, is price stability and maximum employment. Price stability is absolutely essential for people's lives. Most importantly, not most importantly, mostly for people at the lower end of the income spectrum who are living at the edges, at the margins. And so for someone like that, high inflation in the necessities of life, right away you're in trouble. Whereas even middle class people have some scope to absorb higher costs. So we have to it's our job. It's what society has asked us to do, is to get inflation down. And the tools that we use to do it are interest rates. So that's how we think about that.
Courtney Brown from Axios. Can you give us some insight into whether the committee discussed the possibility of slowing balance sheet runoff in the months ahead?
Yes. So I would start by saying that balance sheet runoff so far has gone very well. And as the process has continued, we're getting to that time where questions are beginning to come into greater focus about the pace of runoff and all that. So at this meeting, we did have some discussion of the balance sheet, and we're planning to begin in-depth discussions of balance sheet issues at our next meeting in March. So those questions are all coming into scope now, and we're focusing on them. But we're at the beginning of that process, I would say.
Quick follow-up. Is it the case that the Fed would decide to lower rates and make adjustments to the balance sheet runoff in tandem?
Yes, we do. We see those as independent tools. And so they don't, for example, if you're normalizing policy, you might be reducing rates, but continuing to run off the balance sheet. In both cases, that's normalization. But from a strict monetary policy standpoint, you could say we're loosening and one with tightening. So that could happen. It's not something we're planning or thinking about, but right now we're thinking about getting to a place where we're going to see the balance sheet runoff to continue. We're watching it carefully, and as I said, we'll be looking into that as a committee starting in March.
Thanks.
Simon Urbanovich with The Economist. Thank you, Chair Powell. You've mentioned 6 good months of inflation data, but that not being enough to build up confidence. Based on your previous response that your base case is you probably wouldn't start easing yet in March, the implication is that 8 good months might not be enough either. Roughly how many months do you think you might need of good inflation data to be confident?
Yeah, I'm not in a position to put a number on it. I'm just going to say it's not that we don't have any confidence. We have growing confidence, but not to the point where we feel like it's a highly consequential decision to start the process of dialing back on restriction. And we want to get that right. And we feel like the strong economy, strong labor market, inflation coming down, it gives us the ability to do that. We think that's the best way we can serve the public, because ultimately we've made a lot of progress on inflation. We just want to make sure that we do get the job done in a sustainable way. That's how we're thinking about it. In terms of when that'll be, that'll all come out of our communications. We won't keep that a secret.
Hi, Chair Powell. Evan Reiser with M&I Market News. Can you explain a little bit more on what you're considering when tapering QT? Do you need to see the overnight reverse repo facility all the way down to zero, or is it something that you can start with a couple $100 billion there?
Not a decision that we've made, but I wouldn't think we wouldn't be taking a position that it's got to go to zero. I mean, if it were to stabilize at a different level, but that's not a decision that we've made. That's what we'll be talking about at the March meeting. A whole range of issues will be briefed up, and the committee will get into all of the issues that will be arising over the course of the next, let's say, year or so.
Thanks, Greg Robb from Market Watch. Chair Powell, I want to change gears a little bit. In the presidential primary campaign that's been going on for the last 9 months or so, your name has come up often, and many Republican candidates had said that they probably wouldn't want to give you a third term. So I wanted to give you a chance to talk about that. Do you want another term? You've had on the Fed. What's your stance on that?
I don't have a stance on that. It's not something I'm focused on. Focused on doing our jobs. This year is going to be a highly consequential year for the Fed and for monetary policy, and we're all of us very buckled down, focused on doing our jobs.
Thank you, Chair Powell. Jennifer Schonberger with Yahoo Finance. As you mentioned, core PCE has been running at 1.9% over the past 6 months. And you guys are actually expecting core inflation higher this year at 2.4% compared to that 6-month measure. Given that forecast and that the median is for 3 rate cuts this year, what happens if inflation stays where it's been over the last 6 months for the next 6 months?
So we'll update our inflation forecasts at the next meeting. You referred to the December meeting. That's 3 months old, so it might be lower now given the data we've gotten. So look, as I mentioned, we're going to be reacting to the data. If we get very strong inflation data and it kicks back up, then we'll go slower or later or both. If we got really good inflation data soon, that would matter for both that would tell us that we could go sooner and perhaps go faster. So we're just going to be but of course we'll weigh that with all the other factors. We're setting policy based on the totality of the data.
But just to follow, if inflation stays where it is currently, that would probably mean that the real interest rate becomes more restrictive. Would that mean you'd have to trim more, perhaps, than you already have factored in?
Well, I think if we came to the view that that the 6-month inflation numbers, which are very close to 2, were in PCE world, if we thought that is really where we're going to be, then yes, our policy would be in a different place. It would. But that's the whole point, is we're trying to get comfortable and gain confidence that inflation is on a sustainable path down to 2% or toward 2%.
Hi, Chair Powell. Daniel Davis, Agence France-Presse. I just wondered if I could get your comment on the recent consumer confidence data. It seems to suggest that consumers are sort of moving towards a much more optimistic view of the economy. I just wonder, is it fair to say that they're moving towards where the Fed appears to have been in recent months? And do you think that inflation and falling inflation perhaps has played a role in that? And what challenges do you see going forward? Thank you.
Yeah, so it's been interesting that confidence surveys have been weak at a time when unemployment has been low, very low, historically low for a couple of years. But nonetheless, that's been the case. And we've asked ourselves why that is. And one obvious answer, we don't pretend to have perfect wisdom on this, but one obvious answer is that the price level is high. So prices went up much more than 2% per year for a couple of years, and people are going to the store and they're paying much more for the basics of life than they were 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and they're not happy about it. And it's fine that inflation's coming down, but the prices they're paying are still high. So that is what that has to be some part of why people are unhappy, and they're right to be unhappy. This is why we need to keep price stability. It's why we need to do our jobs, is so that people don't have to deal with things like this. In terms of you're right. In recent surveys, you've seen a couple of significant increases in consumer confidence or happiness with the economy. I guess that's a good thing. That can support spending, can support economic activity. There's some evidence of that. But it is a fact that we have seen a meaningful increase. I think levels of confidence are still maybe not as high as they've been at various times, but they certainly have come up.
Thank you for taking our questions. Brian Menace, CNN Business. Committee members have said they'd like to meet with business leaders and stakeholders in person to learn more about the economy in real time, given that some data are subject to large revisions, the issue of seasonal adjustments being thrown off balance, and many readings of the economy being quarterly. So did any members say they've learned anything not yet reflected in the data, or have you yourself learned anything through anecdotal evidence that hasn't been captured in the data yet?
Well, yes, I'm a big believer that yes. So we do meet with outside groups who come from all different parts of the economy. And I always feel like I mean, I spent most of my life in the private sector looking at companies, individual management teams, and then building out from that. And so starting with GDP data and working into what's actually affecting people's lives is challenging. It's very hard. So I really like anecdotal data. In addition, as you know, the 12 reserve banks have really the best network of anyone that in all their districts, they're talking to, not just the business community, but the educational, medical, all nonprofit community. They have arms into all of that. And so when they come back, that's what goes into the beige book. But that they come back, and what each Reserve Bank president does is during the Outlook go around, they'll say in my district, and they'll talk about 100 conversations. They won't talk up. They will give you input based on 100 conversations that they've had with people of all different walks. And I personally find it very helpful in understanding what's going on. And also, I think you hear things before they show up in the data sometimes.
Did any of them notice slowing economy based on what they've heard from like their district?
Yes, I mean, if you look back at the last, not this beige book, but the one before, it was a lot of slower activity. I think that what you're hearing now is things are picking up a bit. You're hearing not in every district and not every person that we talk to, but you're overall, it feels like you're hearing things picking up at the margin. So that's what comes through.
Thank you, sir. Jeff Cox from CNBC.com. Just kind of looking to put it all together. You had talked about basically the economy looking strong with 3.3% annualized growth in the fourth quarter. Does the strength of the economy speak more loudly to you now than any inflation threat might, that you're in a position, in other words, to keep rates elevated as long as the economy stays strong, and you're more tilted towards that? And then also, perhaps, are you worried at all that the economy is maybe a little too strong right now and that inflation could come back at some point?
I'm not so worried about that. It's again, we've had inflation come down without a slow economy and without important increases in unemployment, and there's no reason why we should want to get in the way of that process if it's going to continue. So I think declining inflation, continued declines in inflation are really the main thing we're looking at. Of course, we want the labor market to remain strong too. We don't have a growth mandate. We've got a maximum employment mandate and a price stability mandate. And those are the two things we look at. Growth only matters to the extent it influences our achievement of those two mandates. Thank you very much.
All right, that is it, folks. That was Daddy Powell, who just crashed the markets and is leaving after he did what he had to do. Very, very interesting conversation that Jerome Powell had with the broader finance media. So we went through a bit of an emotional roller coaster. The S&P ended up going to basically 489. So call it 490, 488.9. We were close to that all-time high level range. And then he started talking about March cuts. The moment we saw the decline in the S&P, let me actually pull it up right here. It is when he said, and I quote, we don't have or it is unlikely we will have consensus by March for a rate cut, which means our base case is not a March cut. There, as you can see right there. So at 245, we hit 488.9 down from 488.5, right? So we're up about 1.5%. And then you see us go down for the day, 485.11. Right now, we are at, where's the S&P? 48.45. We were actually at 484 for a second. Yeah, you can see right there at 484.92. But we came down primarily because of the fact that Jerome Powell said we're not going to get a March cut. Now, remember, everyone thought the March cut was going to happen. Let's pull up the CME watch tool. Pretty much everyone, 77% of people over the past month said that it was going to happen. And then it went down to 40%. Right now, it went down to 37%. So we went from 44 to 37, as you can see right there. 36 plus 1, and we were at 77 about 2 weeks ago. I would imagine this goes down to below 10%. because unless January CPI is below 3%, meaning 2.8 to 2.9, hint, hint, that's not going to happen. We're not getting a CPI coming in at 2.9, 2.8, maybe in February, probably not in February, more likely or March or April. We're still at 3.4. We got to get back to 3.1 where we were at in December. Maybe we get to 3.2 next month, maybe 3.1. If that's the case, he's not cutting rates in March. So now the market's going to have to do a preliminary evaluation of understanding, all right, if the rate cut isn't happening in March and we were pricing in a rate cut in March, that doesn't mean we're not going to get more than 4 cuts, by the way, or 3 cuts, which is what the Fed said in December. We could still get 5 cuts. We could still get 125 basis points. It doesn't have to be 75 basis points. We could still get 150 basis points if it gets better throughout the end of the year. But March is not happening. And if March is not happening, or at least it seems like, in my opinion, March is not happening, then we have to revalue some of these stocks that we have right now. Now, do we have to dramatically revalue them? Probably not. But a company like SoFi that crushed earnings can barely hold $8 right now. And obviously what JPOW said was not good for a company like SoFi. Palantir is 1632, Palantir down 2%, but the Palantir drop is irrelevant in my opinion. I mean, Palantir has been teetering around the 16-17 range for a long time. It went to 17.30 2 days ago. So to me, that's irrelevant. I want to see some of the bigger names and how they're reacting to this. Tesla is down from 192. It was green today. Microsoft 401, that's down 2%. Amazon 155, that's down about 2%. Robinhood took a beating today, down about 1.36%. TFC also down about 1.69. XLF, the financials, was booming yesterday, and they are down about 1%. Google was down 5% in the morning. Google is down 6.63% as the Fed says that they're probably not cutting rates. The only stock that doesn't give a crap about Jerome Powell is SMCI. I don't know how. I don't know who the hell is buying this. I don't know if it's some institution playing with some algorithms. I don't know how it's green, but it's green. So shout out to you if you have SMCI, because that one is green right now. Cause Why Not says, I think February print will be below $3 or below 3, anywhere between 2.7 and 2.9. I think it's possible. JPOW did say on housing, which was another really good point that he made, which is we are expecting the housing data and the lag in rents to eventually show up. So he did acknowledge what we all know, which is that housing data and inflation is going to start to come down. Specifically, rents are going to start to come down. The problem is, when is that going to happen? His argument was kind of just like, it's dependent on the data and we know the data is coming, but until we get the data, we can't meaningfully say that we're going to hit our 2% target. But it's also like he was acknowledging we know that the data is coming. So to me, it's kind of a game of wait and see. And in those opportunities of waiting and seeing, we are probably going to get some dips that are going to be exciting. But, at the end of the day, it is still most likely that we're not going to get that March cut right now. Shorts are getting margin called on SMCI. That's probably one thing. The shorts are probably getting called on SMCI. I mean, it's one of the most heavily shorted stocks in the market. If I was a short on SMCI, though, I wouldn't close my short unless I had to, which would be a margin call, because I think all of the semis are due for a little bit of a pullback. I wouldn't close it right now. I mean, look, maybe especially not after earnings. They already did their guidance, so now they have to execute on those numbers. But if I was short on margin, which is something you should never do, I wouldn't ever even short a company, but short on margin, like shorting, you can already lose infinite amounts. Now, when you're shorting on margin, it's like, it gets intense. So yeah, that covering is probably causing some of the decline. On the contrast, SoFi is heavily shorted as well, 13.6% of the float. And it doesn't look like the shorts are getting margin called or having to cover at all. In fact, if you were a sophisticated short, you probably didn't cover on the run up to $9.45 because you probably realized that this bad boy was coming back down because the market was just not going to be able to sustain SoFi at these levels, which is, I don't know. I don't know what the market needs for this to happen. Maybe they need a rate cut, but as of now, it is coming down. What else do we have? June is the earliest, Michael says. I've been saying this for months now. I think May is possible. I mean, let's look at the May. I think there are 70% of people think it's going to be May. Let's pull this up right here. Okay, so we got May, 58 plus 80% say May. June, that number is at basically the same, a little bit more than 80%. And then July, yeah, same range, almost 90%. So May is the next cut where that people think is going to happen. We're going to be in February tomorrow, which is kind of crazy, dude. We're going to be in February tomorrow. So May is still a long time away. And I guess we're going to have to wait and see if that plays out and see what happens in the meantime. The crazy thing about all of this is that the S&P and the QQQ are at all-time highs. And so when you've got a market that's at all-time highs, you know, well, do we fall in the meantime? Do we what happens in the meantime as we're waiting for all this to play out? SoFi had one upgrade to 21 and saw one for 14. Yeah, the majority of downgrades I saw for SoFi today were pretty dramatic. I mean, I saw like 5 or 6 of them at $7 or $8. And the reason for that, I actually want to show you guys this post. The reason for that is because apparently their sandbagging definitely messed up how analysts were thinking of SoFi. So here's a good quote that Eddie had on my post. Let me pull it up right here. So this is the tweet. This right here I thought was really interesting. So this is what SoFi got it for, and this is why SoFi is down right now. SoFi projected, so I asked yesterday why SoFi keep getting downgraded. Or I asked this morning. He said SoFi projected 0.07 cents EPS to 8 cents annual EPS in 2024. In Q4, SoFi produced an EPS of 2 cents, which is 8 cents annualized. They basically said their profitability won't improve for the next 4 quarters. And even if they're sandbagging, which they probably are, you can't blame analysts that are like, all right, well, if you're telling us you're not going to improve profitability, if the EPS is really not going to grow, then why the hell should we upgrade the stock? Because now you're just a bank that's growing fast, but not, increasing your profitability. I mean, they did say $20 million of profitability per quarter, which is not increasing. That's just staying stable, right? And they guided 10 to 20 million. Maybe they come in at 25, 26, but if you don't sequentially increase that every quarter, then your EPS is not going to go higher. So I agree it's too harsh on SoFi. I think fair value of SoFi is anywhere from $10 to $12, but the street's not happy. The street's not happy right now with SoFi. And so that's some of the issues we're seeing with SoFi right now. SMCI is up 74% in a month. This is also why I feel like we're in a little bit of an AI bubble with the semis. I mean, dude, that's not normal. Like, it's just not. SMCI is not normal to be at those levels. I don't, not because the growth doesn't justify it, just because any stock moving up that much in a month when the underlying economy is growing and it's fine, it's just a little, you got to feel a little certain type of way. And even if you're an SMCI shareholder, dude, if Palantir was up 70% in a month, I'd be like, why? What exactly is happening here to cause this? I don't care how amazing the growth is. That's a lot in a short amount of time. And so you can imagine a general pullback just for people taking profits, unless people are just like, well, it's going to keep growing and keep growing. Remember, they have hardware margins, not software margins. How long can they keep up the growth? It's a game of musical chairs at some point, unless the growth continues. And I think that's how it's going to have to play out. Where's DWAC right now? Where's the Trump SPAC? DWAC is at 38.98. So that bad boy is down from $40. Last week it was up 88%. Now it's down. So DWAC is up 3% on the day, but that's down. SMCI is green. Everything else is red. Pfizer is a little green. GM is green from yesterday. Bitcoin trying to get back up to that 43,000 range. That's okay. Intel at 43.16. ASML 871. Netflix 566. Rumble's up 15%. Wow. I don't know why Rumble's up. Rumble's becoming a Wall Street Bets favorite, I've noticed. And there may be opportunity in Rumble. I will not be partaking in that opportunity, but it does seem like the degens are getting a hold of Rumble. For those that don't know what Rumble is, it is a like free speech version of YouTube or something. So Peter Thiel invested in them a while ago, but I think he's out of it. It was a SPAC. I don't know. Rumble's, it's not that exciting to me, but I think there could be some momentum there. Paramount's up 7% right now. They got an offer for about $30 billion today. ARK is down 2%. ARK has had a tough year already. I think they're down almost 15% for the year. SMCH, the semis ETF, is still doing well for the year, but it's probably down today. Yeah, down about 1.34%. It was 191, 195 at the highs a couple days ago. And then SoFi can't maintain $8. It can't maintain $8. Blake says you don't like freedom of speech. No, Blake, I love freedom of speech. Like, how do you interpret? Sometimes what you interpret is just ridiculous. Yeah, I like freedom of speech. I'm a fan of freedom of speech. I'm just saying, I don't know if that's an investment thesis for Rumble. It definitely wasn't an investment thesis for Twitter, because Elon's down $44 billion in the drain. Now I'm happy he bought it, and I think he'll make it more powerful. But it's going to take a while before that happens. Rumble being a freedom of speech thing is, to me, it's not an investment. Like, they have to make advertising dollars, and if you don't have the users, you don't have the advertisers. It's just that simple. So Amit hates speaking. No, I think you guys should know the one thing I like to do is speak. That's the one thing I think I can do well. Kelly says, I saw a license plate with DWAC as the first 4 letters yesterday. Wow. Maybe that was a dude in Canada who's a MAGA guy. Maybe. I like the like button. I like that a lot. Yo, shout out to Ian. I like the like button. I like that a lot. So yeah, that's a shout out to like the like button. By the way, guys, so let me show you guys this real quick. Need to get your guys' perspective on this. I just hired a new thumbnail guy for Macro Darts, which I'm very close to thinking we should change to Macro Jackson because I just love that name so much. And I need you guys to help just give me yay or nays on the thumbnails. We're working on the thumbnails. My goal with Macro Darts, I think I finally figured out the goal. I want this to be the modern version of CNBC. And you know, CNBC like puts out a diarrhea of videos every day, like 30, 40, 50 videos. I want that to be Macro Darts. We're going to start off with like 2 or 3 videos a day, but eventually we're going to get that sucker to like 10, 15 videos. And I can't do that on this channel. This channel is optimized in a different way, but Macro Darts is a brand new channel. I can just like splurt out content and see how it works. So this was a Dan Ives clip that we did with Elon. It's kind of going for Breaking Points vibe, if you guys watch Breaking Points. So let me know what you think. We're experimenting a lot. He's a really talented designer. You got the Macro Darts logo right there. And then you got Elon and Dan. And I think we can grow the channel with good thumbnails in the finance space because most thumbnails in the finance space sucks. Like CNBC thumbnails are not exciting, right? So let me know what you guys think about that. And see where you need 15 to 20 Gunjan clips. Dude, I was talking to someone else today. They're like, if you get Gunjan, then, the views will be back. So maybe I got to get her back again. Here's the channel, by the way, here. I really want to name it Macro Jackson, dude. I don't know why. There's something about that name, Macro Jackson. Hey, everybody, Macro Jackson here today, back on another episode. Like, that just sounds cool. It sounds corny, but it sounds corny enough to be cool. It really does. It really does. Okay. Ahmed, have you set up the keyboard yet? If you're talking about that sound keyboard thing, no, I have not set it up yet. I'm looking at it right there. But dude, I've just not cared enough to do it. I got to sit down and do it one day. I'm just so busy sometimes doing other stuff. Okay, cool. So we got about 25 minutes till market close. I think we'll end this right at 4. So we'll stay for 25 minutes. We'll end it out till market close, and then we'll be done at 4 p.m. since the main news of the day was the Fed. And we'll be good from there. 6 to 7, I believe I'll be live again with my boy, Jose. And we are doing a pod called Chit Chat. That's what we're changing the name to, Chit Chat. Chip Chat. Sorry, Chip Chat. It used to be called the Semi-Spot. Now it's called Chip Chat. And we'll be talking about NVIDIA. We'll talk about AMD and SMCI earnings, and then Microsoft and Google earnings on top of what that means for AI cloud spend. So if you guys are interested in that, 6 to 7 p.m., we'll be discussing all the good SMCI stuff. Amit says you need to dress up like Michael Jackson for these episodes or wear the white glove. Well, maybe that's what we need to do, dude. I like that name. Macro Jackson, good. Chip Chat is good too, right? Chip Chat. You're chatting about chips. I thought that was a good one as well. All right, let's play this right here. We got someone who sold Google for Amazon today. I want to pull that up for why they sold Google for Amazon and see kind of what they said and their logic behind it. So here's Stephanie Link. She got rid of Googs and she bought Amazon. There we go.
Another mega cap.
No.
And this time you're out of Alphabet.
No.
Tell us. I mean, let's refresh everybody's memory too. Remember, it was Meta a couple weeks ago, week and a half ago, and here we are. We're out of Alphabet. Talk to me.
Because I made a lot of money in it, right? I mean, I bought it last quarter when the stock fell about 10%. You guys remember that? We talked about it. And it was up 26% from the October lows. And so I just thought that the expectations were really high, and I much prefer Amazon. As you know, because I've been adding to that one as well. And so to me, with Alphabet, I don't think the quarter was terrible, but it was just kind of so-so. It was kind of like in line. Yep. Search and YouTube that actually missed the buy side numbers. And to me, they're the higher CapEx. I mean, when are you going to get your returns? I think that's been pushed out as a result. So I think cloud was great, right? Up 26%. That was the highlight. But I just made my money and I wanted to deploy it elsewhere.
I go to the question we asked at the very top of the program as to whether the market is too priced for perfection right now, Joe. You look at the gains that these stocks have had, most of the mega caps since November 1st. Now, you put Apple aside because it's only up 8.5% since November 1st. Microsoft near 20. Now, we're also taking into consideration the losses today among the group. Microsoft still up 19.5% since November 1st. Alphabet up 14.5%. Amazon up 17.5%. NVIDIA up 50 in 3 months. Meta up 30.5%. Raises that issue, you could still beat, but if you're not great on these earnings reports, you're going to get punished. You may not get punished a ton, but you're going to get punished, and there's a good example of it with Alphabet.
Okay. Own the mega caps in an equally weighted nature. I'll continue to own the mega caps because I believe what we're about to experience will be a corrective pause that will refresh. Over the next 30 days, I think the NASDAQ will be at best sideways and at worst will be down. I think the next 30 days, the market will be going down. That's what's in front of us. We had a similar setup last January. Market was up 6%. We followed up in February with down 2.6%. There's clearly been a high expectation that needed to be achieved for earnings. And I would say for mega caps, and really extrapolating that beyond mega caps into other sectors as well.
Well, just take look, AMD is not exactly what we would really put in the mega cap category, but it is in what some have suggested is the AI 5. And it is as well what Stacy Rascon of Bernstein told me yesterday was the most expensive of the AI plays by far going into the number. And then you see what the results are. The stock was combined with the regular session and the after hours yesterday after the number down about 10%. It's pared the losses a bit. But nonetheless, when you're that expensive and you go into earnings, man, you better just knock the ball, not out of the park, like I'm not over the fence, like out of the stadium.
Well, it's part of the AI universe, and it's a classic example of earnings that are satisfactory. Okay, in some examples, the earnings are better than satisfactory, and poor price performance. And what I've learned over the last 30 years in doing this is that signals near-term exhaustion, and that signals that the market is crying for some form of corrective price relief. And I think you get that over the next 30 days.
I think Alphabet was average. I think Microsoft was stellar. I don't know.
Dude, I think the Google itself for Amazon, do you guys think that's a good move? I mean, I'm not doing it, but SoFi fucking 792. Yo, someone fix Google's down 7% now. Holy guacamole. Amazon is down 2.28. Amazon's at 1.6 trillion. Google's at 1.78 trillion. So Google's still, oh wow, Google's still more expensive on a market cap basis than Amazon. Google's PE is 24.7. Amazon's PE is what? Is that right? Amazon's PE is 57? What? Really? Why the fuck is she selling Google for Amazon then? What the fuck? What? Amazon has a PE of fucking 57. Okay, hold on. Nvidia's PE is 50 now that it's 6. It was at 37 before the run up. So Nvidia is still cheaper than Amazon on a PE basis. Meta's at what, 36? No, Meta's only at 27. Apple's the one that's at 30. Apple's at 28 now that it fell from 195. And then what's the other one? I mean, obviously Tesla's at 59, but Tesla's a whole different story. Wow, Amazon's at a 57 PE. What? I did not know that. I thought they were trading at around 32, 33. They're going to have a good earnings, dude. They're going to have to, and like, they're going to need to show more growth from something other than just AWS in terms of net income. They're going to have to get that damn, what do you call it? That retail business to get a little bit more profitable, dude. And I mean, they're working on that. Advertising will be good as well, but still, they need to, wow, 57 PE. She's selling a 25 PE stock for Amazon. I don't think Amazon's growing more than Google. I doubt they're growing that much more than Google. Why is their PE is crazy because they just started really becoming more profitable, whereas Google has been consistently profitable. And the market's just willing to give them a little bit more premium because they think there's more growth baked in versus Google's. Like Amazon, I mean, AWS did 68 billion in revenue last year, if I'm not wrong. I mean, Amazon's a beast. Let me see if I can pull this up real quick. Let me see if this works. So Amazon, is this updated? Yeah, this should be updated. So let's look at this. Let's look at this. So this is my boy Alejandro's tool that I pay $10 a month for. Visual stocks. Let's pick up the revenue and let's do that on a 5-year, 3-year yearly basis. 5 years. Let's do that. So last year they brought in $554 billion in revenue. If this is not wrong. Quarterly, how much do they bring in a quarter? Damn, dude. Last quarter they brought in $143 billion. Okay, so let's look at net income now. Let's look at net income. How bad is their profitability? So last quarter they brought in $10 billion of net income, 9.8. Let's round it to 10, and they brought in $143 billion of revenue. Yeah, look at this. They were unprofitable in Q1 of 2022. They lost $3 billion. That's why their PE is crazy. They just got profitable in Q4 2020. They finally made $278 million of profit, and then they finally, I mean, not just got profitable. Obviously, COVID. That's why they declined a lot, but because they were in growth mode. That's why the stock also went up, because they were growing so much. But wow. Okay, so now in the context of Google, right? Let's look at Google. So Amazon has a basically 10, 12. They're basically, I mean, this is insane, dude. They are making almost 15 times more revenue than they're making in net income. So they traded a 15 net income to revenue multiples. Let's look at Google now. Let's change it to Google. And let's see Google. So Google, we'll do revenue and we'll do net income. Google, on the other hand, as of, this was updated yesterday. Oh, that's great. Google did $86 billion in revenue and they have $20 billion in net income. So that's a 4. So Amazon trades at a 15 revenue to net income multiple. Google trades at a 4 revenue to net income multiple. And they're bringing in obviously $80 billion of profits per year. That's way better than $36 billion or whatever Amazon's bringing in. I never looked at the numbers on this. I really never looked at the numbers at this level. Now let's put both of them together and you'll really see what it looks like. Yeah, I mean, it's tough, dude. It's bad here. And then where's Meta? I want to see Meta. Where's Meta's revenue to net income? So Meta did $34 billion last quarter in revenue. Net income did $11 billion. So that's not bad. That's basically a 3 revenue to net income multiple or ratio. Sorry. Yeah, you're right. Ratio, not multiple. Interesting. But why would you sell Google for Amazon? That's a hell of a PE you're paying for fucking Amazon. I'm not saying I'm not bullish on Amazon, but I mean, dude, that's a lot. That's a lot you're paying for. Or at least to me, that feels like a lot. But maybe there's a lot more growth coming in on Amazon that we aren't looking at. So, okay, so that's Google to Amazon. That's what she's selling for. Put in the chat if you would make that sell. I don't know if she made that's true. She also, that's another reason. I mean, she made money off Google because she bought that early. So that's a good reason. But Amazon's a hell of a buy right now doing that. Did you see the banking sector is not sound? Yeah, let's talk about that. NYCB Bank, NY Community Bank took a beating today. So they're down 37%. So let me pull up a clip on that. I wanted to play that. And we'll talk about what happened there. That was not really the best thing that happened today. Their earnings came out, and again, the earnings just were not good. Really not in the context of what the market was looking for. And they kind of signaled that there's some issues in the banking sector, but they're such a small bank. I think it's secluded to them, but they did issue some problems. So let's get an update on NYCB.
Our community is largely an apartment lender in the New York City area, rent-controlled, rent-stabilized apartments. So those buildings are affected by recent New York rent rules that cap how much you can charge to your tenants. On top of that, you have higher interest rates, so it squeezes the landlords, and there's a lot of refinancing risk ahead. So they posted a big loss there in the fourth quarter, and there's questions ahead. They have about 4% of their loans at office exposure, so that's a touch higher than the median in our coverage universe. So there are some credit quality concerns ahead, and they built their reserves pretty much in line with peers in the fourth quarter to address that.
I'm looking at the Spider S&P Regional Banking ETF. KRE is the ticker. It's off 3.45% today on this news, presumably. how much is this a New York community bank problem versus maybe a wider regional bank problem?
Yeah, so New York Community is really the last of the larger regional banks to report their fourth quarter earnings, and pretty much across the board of their larger peers, everybody was actually pretty sanguine about 2024 credit quality. So this
seems like it's an NYCB issue as an apartment lender and as their commercial real estate exposure. This does not seem like it's a big issue with the broader banking sector. Now, granted, Jerome Powell in that Fed statement took out a sentence that said the banking sector is resilient from last quarter. So we talked about that in the beginning of the show. But that's, it doesn't seem like that's a big issue. I mean, the stock's down 37%. So that's a hefty decline. They missed the market thought they would bring in 200 million or 240 million in profit. They lost about 270 million bucks. So when the expectations are that lopsided, you can go down. Now, you can also go down if some random analyst from Barclays thinks you're going to bring in 65.94 billion in revenue and you're Google and you bring in 65.52. You miss by 0.6%, your ass is out the building. That can also happen. But, on top of that, you can see a decline as well if you're NYCB and those expectations don't go the right way. SoFi's down 6%. Oh boy. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. I'm not gonna lie. I'm very happy I saw those freaking calls, dude. It's so crazy how the market works. I had a thesis on SoFi 2 weeks ago at 7:30. I took a bet. I knew my exit strategy. I said, as soon as this goes up a decent amount, which 30% to me was decent given they were 2026 leaps. So I knew like the liquidity on them would be hard to find. Remember, you need exit liquidity. That's something I also realized in the stock market. In order to make money, you have to buy something at a cheaper price than what someone else is willing to pay for it from you when you give it to that person at a higher price. That's like how the stock market works, apparently. So that means there needs to be a pool of buyers available. Me and TJ are going to talk about this, by the way, on our next options episode. Thursday, TJ, we're doing that. I think 6 to 7. So we're gonna be doing that episode. We're gonna talk about open interest and all that stuff. But you need to actually have someone who's willing to buy what you sell. And in options, especially long dated options, unless you're getting close to the option expiring, or at least somewhat close, there's usually not that many buyers. Now, a company like SoFi that has 286 million shares traded on the day of their earnings, which is just insane levels of volume, there's a lot of liquidity. And so I was able to tap into some of that juicy liquidity, and someone was willing to pay me 30% more than what I paid for SoFi. And I made some money. Now, the crazy thing is that same option, I mean, we can check it right now, but it's probably worth significantly less. It's just crazy that person who bought it from me, they thought, oh, I'll buy it at 90 cents on the dollar, even though Amit bought it at 70 cents on the dollar, because I think it's going to go to XYZ cents on the dollar. Wow, SoFi 784 right now, down about 7%, 6.7%. They were like, well, SoFi is going to be worth way more than what I'm buying for it right now at $9.20. And now SoFi is at 7, almost at the same price right before earnings. In order to make money is to cause someone else to lose. That is correct. I believe the term for this is a zero-sum game. And let me make sure I don't get this wrong. A zero-sum game is when, define zero-sum game. Zero-sum game is when it's a situation where one person's gain is equal to another person's loss, resulting in a net change of 0. In a zero-sum game, no wealth is created. Okay, so investing is not a zero-sum game. Investing is not a zero-sum game. Someone has to lose, someone has to win. Like, no matter what, either you're the person buying it or you're the person selling it, right? And someone's making money or losing money in that exchange. That's what makes an efficient market. So that same contract right now, if I were to buy the $12 and then sell the $17, dude, that same contract, holy crap, that same contract is worth 64 cents. I got rid of it for 90 cents. I would have lost money because I paid 70 cents for that bad boy. I would have been down about 10%. That was a good fucking sell. You don't always get a good fucking sell. Trust me, I've had a bunch of bad sells, bad buys. Sometimes you get a good fucking sell. Sometimes you get to just come into the bank and say, give me the money, and then take the money and get the fuck out of that bank and never show up. That's what happened, dude. That's crazy. That's crazy. Stocks are not a zero-sum game. Options are. Well, no, because again, zero-sum game is a situation where one person's gain is equal to another person's loss, resulting in a net change of 0. So hold on, let me ask Bard. Let's ask Bard this. People are like, there's no use case for Bard. I think there's a great use case for Bard. Here we go. Is the stock market a example of a zero-sum game? Let's see what comes up with. Bard has actually been really useful, dude. It's actually been really useful to me. Palantir's almost at 16. Where's Palantir? Palantir, 1611. Wow, down 4% of the day. Yes, it could be seen as a zero-sum game in trading. In each individual trade, one party buys, the other sells. When you buy a stock at a certain price, someone else is selling to you at the same price. If the price goes up, your gain is offset by the seller's loss and vice versa. In the sense, there is not any wealth creation, just a transfer. Oh, wow. So their argument for a zero-sum game is that it's not about wealth creation. That's why I said it's not a zero-sum game, because I thought, oh, someone makes wealth. Their argument, it's a transfer of wealth. That's why it's a zero-sum game, because no one's making money. I mean, there's no new money. There's just a transfer from the person who bought it low to the person who gets to the same person who gets to sell it high onto the person who's buying it higher from the person who sold it low. But obviously, if you go long term, it can not be a zero-sum game as well. The point is, like, the markets are tough, markets are competitive, and sometimes you got to get the hell out. Sometimes you got to get the hell out, dude. Miners are falling right now. Miners are falling. Okay, let's look at the miners. What do we have on crypto? CleanSpark, wow, down 4%. Coinbase, 127. We got 6 minutes till the market closes. Robinhood, damn it, Robinhood taking a beating today, down 2.6%. Robinhood taking an absolute beating, 2.6%. So we got Robinhood coming down. We got Bitcoin 42,635, Ethereum 2,200, Riot's down about 3.8%, Marathon down 2.8%, IREN down 10%, Hut 8 Mining down 4.8%, CleanSpark down 4.2%, MicroStrategy at 501. It was at 530 this morning. That one's down. So we are seeing a little bit more volatility here. Was it not for 2026? Yes, it was. But my point is, I would have to wait. You know, it's just dead money at that point, because if SoFi is down, the options are not going to go up. So it's not like I would have lost money per se on paper. Same thing with Google today, because I have time for it to expire, and it probably would have done well over the next 2 years. But I don't want to keep it waiting. You know, that's the thing. Puzzle says exactly. In options, there's always a winner and loser that match. In stocks, that doesn't always happen. That's true. No, that's actually very true. In options, there's more likely to be a winner and loser, whereas stocks, long-term investing, that's why Bart said it's not always a zero-sum game, because over the long term, the stock market has historically trended upwards, and that means that there is new wealth creation through dividends, company value, share price appreciation, all that stuff. So I guess short-term trading, it is a zero-sum game. Someone has to win or lose. Long-term, all of us can make money because we're, all invested in some of the, hopefully, better assets that tend to appreciate, and they go up. Cause Why Not says, in stocks, the auction mechanism of prices allows for a win-win situation in many cases, which is why prices always go up in the long run, i.e. not a zero-sum game. Yeah, you're right. You're right about that. So I guess short-term trading, day trading, which I've not gone to that level yet, and I don't think I have enough capital to be doing day trading. When you do day trading, you have to be ready to lose like a good 10 grand a day, right? So I think you need to have some decent amount of six figures to do some heavy day trading, because you have to deal with the volatility. You're not going to win every trade. That's a more zero-sum game. You either win or lose the trade because there's an expiration date, all that shit. Whereas long-term, it's a little bit more open for you to have a chance to win long-term, for everyone to have a chance to win. Amit, do you have anything on real estate market? Yeah, guys, real estate mortgage applications were down 7%. This marks a deacceleration of the incremental reacceleration over the last 3 weeks consecutively of mortgage applications going up. So those mortgage applications coming down we'll see if the trend continues, but that definitely does show that maybe we're in a little bit of an area where people don't want to buy houses yet. Refinancing applications went up about 2%. So refinancing applications went up, but mortgage applications in general came down. I think it's too close to see. We'll see if that trend continues. On the left-hand side of my screen right now, all the banks are red. All the banks are red. Every single bank is dirty. Every single bank is hit. Look at this. USB is down 4%. Nubank's down 2%. Wells Fargo's down 2%. SoFi down 6.43%. Bank of America down 2%. JP Morgan down about 1%. TFC down about 2.65%. So the banks are red. Let's look at the semis. Semis are red except for SMCI, Qualcomm, ASML, and Intel. And SMCI is the big winner here. AMD is stuck down 2.5%, and then NVIDIA. AMD recovered, though. AMD was at like 160, and that's at 167. That's not too bad. And Nvidia's at 615. That's down about 1.9% as well. So okay, we got about 3 minutes till market closes. Meta, Amazon, and Apple report tomorrow. Meta right now, $390, 27 price to earnings. I think they're gonna do well. Zuck's got grilled today by Ted Cruz and Josh Hawley and all the big tech CEOs. I didn't know he would actually be there, but I didn't think all the Congress people would be grilling the CEOs. I thought there were going to be like C-suite executives, but the topic was around child safety on social media, and Zuck took a beating. Let's just say that. Zuck took I mean, they shitted on him way worse than they did on the TikTok guy. So Zuck took a beating today. The stock's down because of Google and advertising, not really because of whatever happened at the testimony. But that one went down. Why is Boeing green? Okay, so I saw this morning. We didn't get to talk about it in the market open. I was confused why the hell they're green as well. I think they gave some decent guidance from my understanding. Obviously, there's a lot of issues in regards to the company and in regards to the 737 and the FAA investigation. By the way, I'm taking a Spirit flight to New Orleans at the end of March. I just booked it yesterday. So wish me luck on that Spirit flight. It was the cheapest one I could find. But Boeing, I think being up 5% is primarily a concept of guidance. And also, the stock got oversold. I mean, like, yes, there were some issues with the planes, and we get that, but I don't think it deserved to fall as much as it did because of the scenario in Alaska Airlines where the window seat flew off. Like, that's a bad thing, but that's not going to happen on every single flight, and they have thousands and thousands of flights every day that take off. So that's why we saw Boeing, I think, get a little bit more recovery as well. Hopefully you don't do it. I'd be sad to lose the market open streams. I think it'll be okay, but like, dude, if I couldn't get that flight, literally I would be paying like $600 or $700 to get to New Orleans. I have a friend's bachelor party that I'm going to at the end of March, and that's the cheapest flight. And there's 2 stops in like Orlando. It's gonna be a mess to get there, but it's like one of my best friends. I gotta go. So we'll see what happens. Hopefully it's not a horrible situation being in Spirit. Okay, here we go, folks. We're going to do the bell, and then we'll be out of here for the day. January 31st, 4 p.m. The stock market is now closed. Stock market's closed. We got Boeing at 211, Meta 390, Palantir 1610, down 3% of the day. SoFi is down 783. New York Community Bank, that's down 37%. Amazon's down. Tesla's down 187. Apple's down. Nvidia's down 1.99%. Google down 7.35% on the day. Hell of a day for Google to go down. I put in an order, but it didn't get filled. My order was more around the 140 range. So Google is still down. SMCI is at 529. SPY ends at 482. Wow. That's almost a 2% decline. We went to 489 on JPOW speaking, and then he said March cuts are off the table, and then that sucker fell. Wow, look at Microsoft falling below 400. Microsoft cannot keep up the gains. Microsoft fell. PayPal's down 3.6%. Bitcoin 42.5. Bitcoin just fell 500 points since we started the stream. Snowflake 195 down from 207. Enphase is down 2%. Verizon is down about 0.26%. Neo's down. Alibaba's down. Everything is down. There's a little bit of green after hours, but we pretty much got a red day in the markets. We got a red day in the markets. It all starts again tomorrow. That's correct. Are you taking a date to the party? No, it's a bachelor's party. You're not supposed to have a date. You're supposed to be bachelors. You're supposed to be just like guys. So I wouldn't imagine you're supposed to bring a date to the party. We're just gonna, dude. I last time I went to New Orleans, it was 2015, and I was like in high school, so I didn't really get to explore the French Quarter. For those that don't know, the French Quarter is like the most wild place on planet Earth. I mean, like, it's just insane. But to be honest, I'm looking forward more to the beignets, I think is what they call them. These like flour puffy things of dough. Last time I had it was 2015. So it's been like almost 10 years since I had one. So that's what I'm looking forward. I don't really care about the drinking or anything like that. So yeah, that'll be fun, but we're flying Spirit to get there. All right, S&P at 482, Palantir 1610, Robinhood took a little bit of a beating today as well. Robinhood on the day 1074, down 2.45%. Palantir 1610, and you got the broader S&P at 482.91 for the day, down about 2%. All right, I think that's it for the day. Fisherman says those things are fire. Yeah, man, they're amazing. I haven't had them in years, so it'll be fun to eat them again. All right, folks, that's it for me. JPOW, tank the markets. It is what it is. He had to say what he had to say. We'll see what happens tomorrow. We'll keep going from there. I'll be live on Chip Chat Semiconductor Podcast at 6 o'clock. So make sure you're tuned in from 6 to 7. We'll be discussing all things semis. And Cafe du Monde. Yes, that's the place. Cafe du Monde. That's the place. Cafe du Monde. And then we'll be back for the market open tomorrow, 8:45 a.m. And we got Finance Junkies at 9 p.m. previewing Meta, Amazon, and Apple. All right. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate it. Have a great, great day. As always, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for spending your time with me on the market close. Again, it just means the world to me as we're growing the channel. And yeah, thank you. I'm glad you guys are getting value. I'm getting a bunch of DMs every day. People saying they're liking the show. It's becoming a regular thing for them. So thank you, everybody. It means the world to me. I'll see you in a couple hours. Bye, everyone. Have a good one.